and welcome to Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where we talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie.
I'm Thom.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're talking about the 2017 film A Ghost Story. This will contain spoilers.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so A Ghost Story 2017. This one has a slightly easier job for me to explain the story than last episode, where I had to do 5 Black Mirror episodes.
You were the one that signed up for this job, Thom.
I was. So, in this one, there's a couple, and they're in a house, and they're going to move house, but then the man, Casey Affleck, dies in a car crash, and his girlfriend, Rooney Mara, is really sad, but then he becomes a ghost. He gets up with the sheet still on him, and then he's a ghost. And then he watches the events of what's going on in the house happen around him while he can't do anything. So like Rooney Mara moving on with her life. And then there's another family comes in after, and then they leave because he scares them with his ghost powers. And then there's some annoying existentialist man in a party who comes along, and then it becomes office buildings in the future, and it's sci-fi, and then he jumps off, and then it's the past, and then it's his relationship again, and then he reads a bit of paper, and then he disappears.
Yeah, that's the film right there.
Well done.
Yeah. Oh, and Rooney Mara eats a pie.
For
Sorry, I
7
forgot.
minutes.
That's a crucial plot detail.
Yeah, it is. I think the thing about the film is the pacing is very slow, and it's not slow in a bad way, in my opinion. It's just weird, like hearing everything basically told at that much speed, because it's like that. It's like, oh, you can summarize the movie in like 1 minute. That's basically everything that happened, and it was an hour and a half long. There's anything like particularly like good or bad about that inherently. It's just a bit of an odd point. We're all fresh from watching the movie as well.
We are very fresh.
As fresh as that pie.
We are as fresh as that pie was.
Was a very fresh pie.
I guess because it's probably what the most people will take away from this movie, which I'm sure David Lowery's thrilled that the first thing everyone wants to talk about is the pacing. He loves that.
But the first thing we want to talk about is the pie.
Oh, of course. Well, I think that ties in conjunction, with the picing. Yeah,
good.
Oh,
Nice one.
That's why I'm on this podcast, for things like that. Tune in next week for
more pie
more
puns.
pun. Just one though.
See, Ben,
One singular pun.
We always think, why do we bother with him? But like, it comes up with something like that, like once an episode. And like,
That's true. He does.
Exactly.
That's why he's a special guest.
Yeah. That's why you're a guest and not just special.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. What was it? The pace? The pacing.
There we go again.
So
That was a pun.
it's very slow and methodical, with intent, because there's kind of a lot about. It seems to be the theme of the film was like observing legacy. So there's a lot of just watching things happen around you that you can't control. So it felt like probably the slow like dreariness of it was part of it, because the pain was that he just couldn't do anything. He could just stand and watch, which is just kind of like us. Like he's kind of literally me in this.
He is
I
kind
would
of
say.
literally us.
Yeah.
He had this thing where he had this piano, and towards the end of the movie, he sits down at it and it makes a noise. And personally, I think that really
touched you, did it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did. It did. It made me empathize a lot more for him, and the piano's character as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we are joking and goofing. We are joking and goofing.
We are,
What
But
do you
I
think?
think,
but we
I
do
think
also
that the
have
word-
some points behind it.
yeah,
Which is
I think that,
Entertainment of excellence for you.
yeah. But I think that there were definitely a lot of good points that this movie hit where it was trying to show it. I mean, at first, it was interesting to see the theme change from about halfway on when we leave the relationship, because at first I thought that the ghost thing was supposed to be like just a metaphor for Rooney Mara's like grief and guilt over his death. Like it was kind of just looming over her and she had to deal with it, almost like constantly observing her. And then when she leaves, she's kind of leaving that behind. But, there's still a part of her that knows she's abandoned like his memory. But then it seems to actually be about like the unstoppable march of time, I guess. But then it goes back in time. So it doesn't kind of march onwards to the Yellowstone erupting, atoms tearing apart thing that Rick and Morty fan was talking about in the party.
To be honest, I much preferred the first half of this film where it was very much dealing with like the observing voyeuristic side.
You loved that eye scene.
Yeah.
Oh, I really did. But I think it had a really
And the forehead kiss scene.
it had a really good approach where it was able to deal with something like deeply upsetting, but it did it in quite a unique way where it was always like it was always like present, but it wasn't dealing with like ghosts in a traditionally like spooky way. It was ominous in a very like emotional way rather than like, oh, look at that scary thing in the corner. It was all like very peripheral.
Yeah.
And I think that like really hit the theme of the first half. But I think as it went on, to me the message became a bit more like jumbled up, and I just didn't think it like resolved quite as well as I would have hoped.
Yeah, I definitely think the film shone when it was dealing with these two characters, because I didn't realize how much I actually did enjoy those scenes until it came back at the end.
Yeah.
And you feel it kind of tying up, and it feels, because it is kind of what it's going for, but that middle to kind of before the final sequence, it feels very cold emotionally. And then when you get back to him having to go through their relationship in that house again, you go like, oh, these were real characters, and I can understand all the emotions she was going through after he died now. Like the feeling of she just wanted to give up and eat that. Like eating the whole pie was actually, it is quite sad in retrospect, but you do have to watch 7 minutes of it. And like my favorite scene of the movie is definitely when you see her listening to Casey Affleck's song in the time that she did first listen to it and after his death, which then at the end you find out when she had listened to it the first time, she was just kind of in a mood and very dismissive of it. And it's only she listens to it, and then one of the only lines of dialogue in this movie is Rooney Mara going, bruh, hella mid, you posted cringe L. but after he's died, she's kind of appreciating it, and he can see that, and he can't do anything to like comfort her or say thank you. Her hand is like just out of reach of the sheet covering him. So it's this tragic emotional thing that gets more weight at the end, and I think that whole like little vignette is what really worked with the film, and I got what it was doing about the time, like constantly changing around him, and he couldn't do anything about it. But I think the grounding of those characters is what really worked, and I wish we got more of that.
Yeah, I mean, when I said like I didn't feel like it all wrapped up how I would have like wanted it, I think the actual ending itself I did quite like. It was more so how they like got to that the bit in between when she left and then when he like has to relive it, that I didn't feel like the way they got from A to B was necessarily I don't know. That I felt that bit like kind of dragged, ironically, even though like the first bit is so slow. But I think that first bit, as you're saying, especially with like the music scene and the pie scene, it does a really good job of like not really showing any overly explicit breakdown or like, emotions. It's all very like subtle, and it's kind of like that feeling. I mean, there's two sides to it, I guess. There's her like moving on, but that immediate like hitting her like now what, where she's sort of like it's overwhelming the emotions, where she's not like, you know, necessarily overtly expressing it, but you can really like feel it. And I think just his like looming presence really like adds to that like just feeling of complete emptiness and confusion.
Yeah,
I definitely think the loomingness of the ghost was like much better handled in the start, because it feels like this ominous presence, whereas later on it's more like, oh, this is our audience viewpoint into what's happening.
Yeah,
you know, these characters aren't being spooked.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, I'm going to give a slightly different perspective. This is where I was talking to you guys before, and I said I might be a bit controversial. See, I actually think the movie wouldn't work without the second part, and I quite enjoyed it.
Hot take.
So, yeah, I mean, the whole message of the film is about this sort of unstoppable march of time and the effects of legacy. I mean, it's obviously very upfront when that nerd guy talks about it and is like, so Beethoven writes the symphony and his grandkids remember it, and it becomes this like famous piece of music that's hummed by everyone around the world. And, you know, if the sun eats our planet and we're on another planet, maybe someone will still remember it. And but even then, it's all rendered meaningless by the end of the universe and everything getting pulled apart. And I think one of the messages of the movie is kind of a counter argument to that, that's sort of shown, not told throughout the film. It's about like, you know, who really cares, you know, billions of years in the future, when like you've got your life now, you've got people who care about you. And it's that's kind of where the third act of the movie came in, because it was him sort of looking back and revisiting his old decisions, and, you know, whether he'd it's not so much about what he's going to leave behind in the future. It's more what he would have done differently, and if he'd better appreciated the life he'd sort of had. And I love that comes into like the note, because it's like the note was kind of the girlfriend's legacy to him, but as the audience we never actually get to see this note. So I think that might have been a sort of, does it really matter to everyone else, as long as like whatever she would have said to him sort of matters to him, then good.
Yeah, I think I agree. I did, when it got to reveal that was the theme, I liked that. I think that it was just a bit plodding around to get there. It was almost like it didn't stumble into it, but it felt like it was trying to get across that message, but hadn't done very well up until the very obvious speech about it. But then again, when the two characters come back, and then it was like, oh, now it's revealing about the legacy, because you're kind of seeing the impact he specifically had on Rudy Mara, who apparently the character's name is C. I think it's like C and M. It might be the other way around.
C-M, like the letters C, M.
Yes. But it shows, then it makes sense. It's like, oh, this song is this kind of personal legacy. No, it's not going to be, you know, it wasn't written for God or whatever, for the symphonists, or it's not going to be sung billions of years in the future. But after he died, it helped her come to terms. You know, it helped her specifically through this.
Yeah.
And then the same with the note that she writes that is specifically for Casey Affleck's character, and that helps him on. So it definitely has those themes, and I think I think basically I understood the themes of the second half, and I agree that it is integral to what it's doing. I just wish it did it differently.
Yeah, I think that
I wish a lot of it was done different.
his approach to legacy is interesting in that, as you're saying, it doesn't show, like, initially when he like jumps off, we were thinking, is this like the future that the guy was talking about, or has it actually gone to the past? It turns out it's the latter, and I think it's interesting showing legacy, interpreting like your past rather than looking at like what the actual concrete legacy was, because it is very much like him then looking back, and it's like these multiple layers are built up of voyeurism basically, and the lack of intervention he has, which as I say, I did really enjoy like the ending itself, but it was like basically that section, I think it was from about 50 minutes onwards, where like the house passes owners a few times, that I just think like dragged a bit, and like that whole speech thing, I think it was just a bit of like a ham-fisted way of like delivering those themes.
Yeah, that is one of my only criticisms about that part. It's like the whole like nerd speech was very on the nose. But I did quite like the whole like shots just of the ghost existing and being there while all of this happens around him. I think, you know, it's one of them things where it's like you don't necessarily enjoy the experience of watching it, but it really does help enhance the points, like the feeling of like just total helplessness that started after Rooney Mara had left. So the whole start of the film had this really strong start where it was kind of, you know, all the shots were, we'll talk a bit more about the cinematography later, but the shots were all kind of from a ghost's point of view, and there was a lot of shots of just the ghost standing there watching Rooney Mara sort of go through grief. And as you said, there was like there's this element of voyeurism, of just watching and not really affecting much. Apart from when she brings home a guy and he goes all mental and like blows up the lamps, and
well, it happens a few times. There's a
when
few
that Spanish
of
family
outrage,
comes in, and he just like goes completely berserk.
I think he went berserk because he could, right? At that point, he was like, "Oh, I could do something, and I've got lots of things to vent. So I'm gonna smack everything."
It felt like the obvious part of the first movie is like Rooney Mara getting over his death, but I think the sort of underlying theme is him coming to terms with his own death, because it's kind of mirrored in the ghost in the flower flower sheet who was haunting her own house. But I think her purpose was kind of, you know, she hadn't come to terms. She was waiting for someone, and she couldn't remember who. So it's like how long
She forgot.
And I think there's a cool parallel there, because she ends up like sinking into the floor like Obi-Wan style when it's complete because she can't remember, whereas he gets like the fulfillment of actually seeing the note, and that's like ending his like struggle. So
Yeah.
I think they have very different like perspectives on that kind of thing, because they're both obviously like longing for something, and as you say, coming to terms with their own death. But one of them, well, obviously you don't really know how it works with the whole like going back in time thing, but like the ending that Casey Affleck's character get is very much like they have this note which is like symbolic of the whole ideas of the legacy and the relationship and that kind of stuff. So it's very much like feels that there's a conclusive end to him.
Yeah, I think it kind of took him revisiting his own life and realizing, you know, what he had really was what kind of helped him come to terms with his own death and, you know, disappear Obi-Wan style through the floor.
I mean, I think, this is like A24. It's shot with like the aspect ratio, a lot of the very, very slow lingering shots and the cinematography. So you might think that like it comes across as pretentious, and some of it does to an extent. But I think this is really a film that like utilizes the medium of cinema to tell the story, because just literally like all these meditative moments are really like dependent on the camera work, and the camera work is obviously meant to be like reflective of that, the perspective, and it's very much putting the audience. I know that this all sounds like very obvious when you watch it, but I just think it's really you can say all you want about it being like pretentious with the long shots and stuff, but I do think that like, unlike some stuff that sort of do it for the sake of it, I think there is definitely a point to be made in this film where it like definitely serves the story and the themes going for it.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of tendency to like view these sorts of films with like really good laid back cinematography, where it's just, you know, a lot of long shots, a lot of lingering shots, a lot of like wide shots, and the polar opposite of other cinematic masterpiece, Mile 22, where there were lots of cuts, but but it's like, and this is my personal opinion, I don't care. I like it because it's got great cinematography. I think as you said, it really does suit the sort of plot and the sort of message it's saying. Because of the middle sequence, which apparently is a bit controversial, but a lot of that was just showing that like he's completely like helpless, and that time keeps passing on, and doesn't really matter if you're like lingering over one like pie eating scene, or if it's basically when it goes back in time to the to like when the house was, before the house was built, and it's like the family's there, next cut they're dead, next they're decomposing, next they're pretty much fully decomposed. Doesn't really matter, he can't really influence much of it.
I think the thing with cinematography and a lot of the more like technical stuff like editing, there's three kind of paths that it can go down. Either it really like acts against the film, as you're saying with like Mile 22, where it a lot of people say that you only really notice editing when it's bad editing. So like also a Bohemian Rhapsody,
I was gonna say,
if it's like excessive cuts to the detriment of the storytelling, then that's gonna like become obvious. And then there's the opposite end, which I think this film like pulled off, which is where like the cinematography and that kind of more technical stuff that you might not necessarily notice in like your blockbuster type films is actually like really integral to what the film's trying to communicate. And then I think in the third way, which is like in the majority cases where that kind of stuff is like it just feels irrelevant, because obviously if you like sort of more familiar with filmmaking techniques and stuff, you might pick it out, but it's not like it's been intrusive to the extent where you would necessarily point it out in terms of the story. But I feel like the way that they approached it in this, and I can see why people might criticize it, but to me, like that was like the main draw probably of the film, and like how slow the approach was, and I think that could only really be achieved by this directing and cinematography, and it did, like all the shots just looked amazing, I thought.
Yeah, I don't think there was a single shot I didn't like. They could have all been like a collection of photos in like a book. They were really, really pretty.
Which is probably why it had the good old, square with rounded corners. I guess it was supposed to be old, like video
VHS
camera
tape
or something. Yeah, so that because it's kind of like the whole legacy thing. See,
spooky.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, yeah, the cinematography was great. I liked that. I think it's one of those movies where I could understand me watching it one day and really like getting into it, but it wasn't today.
What do you think
I
was
can
holding
appreciate
you
it.
back?
Yeah, go on.
What's holding me back? I felt that it was I don't know, it was just felt very empty to me, and that there were lots of things that it could have conveyed the same message quicker. And
This is what TikTok is doing to our generation.
it's bloody TikTok.
Speaking of which, follow us on TikTok, which you've probably got by now.
Yeah, but it's that, and also, I mean, this is possibly just me not getting what the film was about initially, but the kind of like sudden change in what the theme was that I wasn't ready for. And like, I think that it was doing what it wanted to do very well. I just didn't really fully connect with what it wanted to do.
See,
you know,
that's very interesting.
Yeah, because I feel like that the like stripped back approach, as you called it, like empty, and I think that was like a lot of what I was going for.
I think a lot, really
definitely in the characters, and also like a lot of the choices, like just the simplicity of having the sheet over the ghost, like that instantly, that iconography is like, you know, you associate it with ghosts, but it's such like a simple design that, and also like it just really like pops out in a lot of the scenes because
it does.
It looms in the corner like really well. Like what I mean is, it did what it wanted to do really well.
But you didn't like it.
I just didn't fully get on board with what it wanted to do.
I think it's just because like empty could often like be, it's like a semi-critical word, but I do think that's like its intention.
I mean, that's an interesting take, because maybe on another day I wouldn't have come across like liking it so much, and you know, maybe another day you would have liked it a bit more. I mean, that might just be a testament to the method of storytelling it's choosing, being like very, I don't want to say it depends on the mood. It's just like you need to be in the sort of right emotional headspace for it. It's kind of like, I suppose, the same with like, you know, like a long, very proggy album that's got like tracks that are like 10 minutes long plus. It's like, you know, in the right headspace you can get it, in the wrong headspace you might just want to skip and get something a bit shorter on.
I do think like obviously with a lot of what's the plot, and also like a lot of the emotions that it gets at, this I imagine would be like a very difficult film if you'd experienced something similar in like recent times. And I think a lot of the stuff about it will probably, like, the more you sit and reflect on it, it almost becomes more ominous than like in the moment, because there's nothing like that you immediately like react to, like a visceral type of thing. But I think a lot of like the deeper stuff that it's getting at is quite like disturbing.
It's definitely the whole themes of it is a slow dread, and that's the vibe it wants. Like, it wants you to feel, oh no, I can only watch and I'm helpless, and also lots of things are empty and I'm bored. But I did feel those things. It did it very well.
I have no mouth and I must scream.
But I didn't like feeling those things.
But yeah, well, I wouldn't say I liked it either, but it's deliberate discomfort. Isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's what I've been trying to get at. It's not emotions you want to feel. You feel a bit bored sometimes, and you feel a bit like, oh, this is dragging, and you feel like, you know, watching that nerd guy go on his tirade about bloody, like, oh, the sun's going to eat us, and then the universe is going to die, and it's all meaningless for, you know, 5 minutes straight or whatever it was, and Rooney Mara eating a pie for 7 minutes straight. But that's all to kind of emphasize the emotions that the ghost is feeling. Because I mean, moving on to a slightly different point, I think the acting from the ghost with no, you know, visual cues, it was interesting, because a lot of the film, especially that second act, it did feel like the ghost was just kind of standing there, but also in the first act, especially, you could see that the ghost very much had like reactions. Like you could just see him like you could almost see his like face fall, and like when Rooney Mara brought that other guy home, and he just kind of sat back in his chair, and there's this look of like being absolutely devastated, and in some of the other scenes where he's like going all beast mode and like flipping the light switches and everything, he's legitimately angry.
Yeah,
and you could see that emotional depth behind the white sheet. But equally, through a lot of the film, there is no emotion coming through that white sheet, which is like, that's what time does to an MF.
I think I discussed this a bit when we were talking about 2001 with Hal. It's a method, I think, called the Kuleshov effect, where you have like a still image of someone, and then you're presented with like different images, and then you flash back to that, and then you even like if the image is identical, you can like see you project like a different emotional reaction based on what you've seen prior. And I think very much when you're presented with something like as flat and lifeless, literally as a ghost, then you are like basing obviously what the surroundings and like projecting your own sort of reactions on. But I do think that like somehow he was able to convey that stuff quite well, despite obviously the immense limitations in it. I just feel like his presence throughout the whole film was like really well done.
Well, yeah, definitely. I also, you could feel a lot of the like sadness and pain and anger of not being able to comfort Rooney Mara and things. And they actually had to work quite hard to get that look, apparently. Like he's wearing a hoop for most of the movie to keep the sheets away. Yeah, and there's like, I can't remember what else. It's like petticoats he's got on or something. And they did do a lot, but I do think it'd be really funny if he'd won the Oscar for Best Actor in a Leading Role. And I just think that'd be great. Just for the uproar, they should have done it, because it would have been funny.
Like if Pedro Pascal got Best Actor in The Mandalorian Series 3.
Yeah.
When exactly. Someone else under the suit the entire time.
Yeah, at least you said he was actually playing the ghost all the time, right? It wasn't just a stand-in.
That's true. It's true.
So it's already better than Pedro Pascal.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked a little bit about the cinematography. Let's talk a bit more about the cinematography. It's really cool.
It is cool.
Lots of symmetrical stuff, frames within frames as well, with the windows, and lots of looking through windows and doorways and observing points.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of like stationary stuff as well, which was really good. And this was directed by David Lowery, right, who also did The Green Knight, which I've heard a lot of good things about. I'm not sure watched it myself, but I'll definitely be intrigued to watch that after.
And Pete's Dragon, Ollie.
Pete's Dragon, and did he do Peter Pan and Wendy, I think.
Peter Pan and Wendy, yeah.
Just
gonna
straight
have to go
fire.
binge his other stuff.
I know. Yeah. But I'll definitely want to watch The Green Knight, because I've heard that's got like stunning cinematography.
Masterpiece after masterpiece.
You don't miss.
I want to watch The Green Knight as well, and I hear that there's a specific dirty rag is involved at one point.
Ooh.
Interesting.
That's all I'm gonna say.
I think why I like maybe gravitated a bit more, like, it sounds like Tom did, towards some of the cinematography and stuff, is because I've seen a few films recently that like they have shots like that like last even longer, but it doesn't feel like there's any real intention behind it, as I've said. But yeah, I'm just talking about Saturn Tango here.
Oh, named and shamed.
I know.
Oh no, we've got the we should have it on the EAV shame list.
I mean, it's not bad, but it is 7.5 hours and not much really happens.
7.5 hours?
Yeah.
Whoa. Bloody hell.
Yeah, if you're on a challenge, try and watch that in one sitting. I lasted 4 hours.
From what you said, I think I'd prefer to watch Once Upon a Time in America twice.
Yeah.
Which would equal the runtime, I think, which is insane to me because that's the longest film I've ever watched, I think.
Well, yeah. I mean,
What about the
7.5
Snyder cut?
hours. Like, that sounds like really intimidating, but if you like binged a mini series or something, it would probably be a similar length, if not longer.
That's true.
But
I've definitely binged more than 7.5
Yeah.
hours in one day.
But Saturn Tango, well, I haven't actually. But,
You're a fake TV fan.
but it's just like the lack of plot. I mean, this isn't an episode about that. We'll talk about. Get back to a ghost story,
A ghost story.
or as
But
you
you're
call it,
haunted by the ghost of Satan Tango.
and it's the terrifying one.
Yeah. We were a bit confused at first because we thought that this was more of a political movie, didn't we, Ben?
We did, yeah. We thought. So obviously, the film's called A Ghost's Tory. So it was. We thought it was going to be about whether a ghost is the Tory or whether the Tory is belongs to the ghost.
Before the ghost became a Tory, do you think it was a floating voter?
Oh, it was.
Because it floats because it's a ghost.
See, this is why you're a host
Thank
and
you.
I'm a special guest.
A good host.
We're a G host. Right, G's. Got
Nice
him.
one, Ben.
Oh, wow.
Did
Didn't even cut to it. That's how good we are at jokes.
Wow.
G
Amazing.
hoax. Yeah. So
yeah, I was a bit disappointed. It wasn't like a political drama.
Yeah, I know.
yeah, we were wondering when the point in the movie that he became the Tory was. I think there's a few different arguments you could make. Going to that party and seeing all those like weird, like disparaging viewpoints, like that guy was talking about lesbianism, like. I have no problem with it as long as it's all in their own home. It's a lifestyle choice.
I forgot about that. That was so
I think the main character was a bit, lost and didn't know where to go. And I think that really, I mean, this was 2017, so this was peak Brexit. We hadn't quite got to the whole Brexit discussions yet.
No.
It was also the start of the Trump era. I would say that this ghost is a Tory.
Sure.
Any Tory listeners out there, do you agree? Do you not? Why?
Yeah, this one's for you.
Like and subscribe. And follow us on Instagram at EOV Podcast.
Well, there's one final elephant in the room, or should we say ghost
Ghost in the room.
Ooh.
in the room, which is the soundtrack. We've not talked about the music at all.
We haven't, and it's a really, really good soundtrack. I mean, to start with, it kind of didn't. No, to start with, there was that like piece of classical music, I think, which was very good, and it kind of ebbed and flowed throughout the movie, where it kind of just was laying in the background. But because there wasn't much dialogue, there were definitely points in the movie where it became the focus, like during the past when he was very angry, it became very loud, that sort of audio pathetic fallacy.
Oh my god, Ben, you're not just saying it served its purpose.
I know, I'm making up a right word
God.
salad to get around that.
Well, I think that the soundtrack served its purpose.
Well,
Fair
that's
enough.
why you're only a special guest.
Another thing that was really stood out, as you were saying when we were watching, was the sound design as well.
Absolutely, yeah. There was a lot of there were parts of the movie where it didn't, like, there wasn't much sound design going on, but there was for most of the movie, like, just some really cool, like, some points it's almost like I said, it was almost ASMR like, and there was this really cool bit where it sounded like someone was tapping on your headphones as I can't remember exactly which bit that was. Was that when he was when he discovered that his partner had had a guy around.
Maybe. I think
It might have been, yeah.
yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff did feel like very eerie and a bit unsettling, but I think it really did work.
Yeah, it did, definitely.
Would you say it served its purpose, Tom?
I would say it served its purpose so well.
Nice. I mean,
Yeah.
before we wrap it up, I think there's one other thing I wanted to just quickly mention, actually. The way the film uses, like, a lot of the, classic ghost tropes of, like, flickering lamps and people walking through walls and,
ghost subtitles.
Ghost subtitles and, you can see people, but they can't see you. It's... just stuff like that. But none of it felt cliched, and none of it felt like it didn't deserve to be there.
No, it all felt emotionally relevant to the scene. All the ghost powers, on purpose, because he could go through walls, but he still had to be scratching away to try and get to that note. That was pretty powerful stuff.
It was, yeah. The whole like starting sequence when it all seemed to be from a ghost's POV, and you hear the noises and all that, which kind of bring you into the movie. It didn't feel like, oh, here we go, it's a ghost story kind of opening. There's some noises. I wonder who's there. Let's go and check. I would say it felt fresh because there's no getting around the fact that they are just tropes, but they did feel like they were used effectively and for the betterment of the film rather than just because it's a ghost story. You have to include a random like kind of jump scare that isn't actually the ghost kind of thing. That I'm talking about when Rooney Mara like bonks the window.
Yeah. And also the whole idea of like seeing time from his perspective as well. I think that, well, they left that semi-ambiguous whether that was like the way they were just structuring the narrative or that was like how he was actually experiencing stuff. But I think it was like a really unique way of doing it a lot, along with like a lot of the other stuff. Like also just the fact that the catalyst behind the whole film, like the guy's death that was done off screen. I think just all choices like that were really like cool and I don't know. It just felt like a very fresh spin on something that we might have seen a few times before.
It was nice not seeing the death on screen. It was a good use of show don't tell there, which was kind of counteracted by the nerd guy's rant later in the film. But it was nice to see the shot of the house, which you assume still has the couple sleeping inside. You slowly pan, see the tire marks, see the car, cut a bit closer, and oh wow, he's dead. He's kind of dead,
Yeah,
that was good. And with that, unless we have anything else to say, now's the time when we let the viewers and listeners know whether we think the film is good.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, with decimal points, Tom.
Okay. Whew. I think I can go to 3DP.
Is that it?
3DP?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Sorry.
You have to go to
How
at
many
least pi DP.
That's not possible. I'm sorry.
Well, make it possible.
Right.
Do it.
Okay. Do I have to say my rating first?
Yeah, I think you should go first because you're obviously a bit more.
I didn't like it as much as you two.
You're a bit more critical of it, and I'm interested to see where you go before we say ours.
Well, okay, so I'll say this. I'm glad that this was made, and I appreciate all of the themes, and I love a movie that gets you to do a bit of a talk afterwards. But I just felt
mean like all the movies we do on the podcast?
Yeah.
Like Terminator one.
But like, it's helpful when it actually has something to talk about, And I understood what it was saying, but I felt like what it was saying wasn't important for me or emotionally resonant for me. So what, all my ratings are very personal rating. So for me, I'm going to give this a 6 point with pi zeros after it.
A 6?
Really?
Oh my
Wow.
God.
With pi zeros.
With pi zeros. Okay, that's good. The personal rating thing is good. That's why we take an average for our website, because it gives you an average snapshot into our stuff. I know I've been the critical one of films in the past.
Yeah, and I think, as we were saying before, it is very like mood dependent whether you want to like sit with this slow burn that's like quite depressing. So maybe you're just too happy.
Yeah,
that's why
these
you're
are going
slow.
to be like, you two are trying to defend your poor film, but I've wrung its neck in front of your eyes. We're going to get a 6 out of 10, which is a favourable review.
It's back as a ghost. Oh, 8.1.
Yeah.
I told you it'd be a bit controversial.
What did you say? 8.1?
Yeah, I did really, really enjoy it, and there were obviously parts I can criticise about it. But I don't think there was anything that really hampered my enjoyment of the film. And it might just be I was in like, really good mood for it, and it really resonated with me at this like moment in time. But yeah, I stand by that. I really enjoyed it. And, the cinematography, you could just go, oh, well, you're a cinema nerd, so of course you're going to like the cinematography. To which I go, yes, that's one of the reasons I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I also really, really enjoyed it. And I think that when I was watching it, I was thinking a lot of the like themes and stuff seem quite obvious. So maybe like when we're discussing it, like we won't really be able to provide that many like nuanced personal takes, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job discussing it. I think that it's interesting that we've had like different perspectives. To me, like I think what brought it down slightly was like that later section towards the end, and especially like the whole speech bit. To be honest, all that like party sequence, I feel like if you did cut that entire thing, it wouldn't have necessarily like diminished the themes. I just don't really get why they had to like force it down our throats, really.
you could have done the party scene like the same sort of way, but it's not as long, and you could have maybe had, a little soundbite of someone going, but will anyone remember Beethoven's Ninth when the universe has its heat death?
Well, exactly. But if I keep rambling on without saying my rating, we're going to get seconds closer towards said heat death. So I'm going to go with...
You've almost rated the podcast episode.
I'm going to go with a 7.9.
Oh, so different from ends.
Well, yeah.
I'm saying it's valid, so you don't feel too bad about underrating this gem, this masterpiece. But I won't hold it against you, because I know
someone over here gave it a 6.
Yeah, I did, and I'm happy.
That's lower than. Did you just look at our list of like films which you can find on entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com and see that there's a huge gap between like 7.4 and like 4?
No, I've actually made a point not to.
So you gave it. We gave Birdemic a 5, right? So this is only like one higher than Birdemic.
I enjoyed watching Birdemic.
Yeah, enough to give it a 5 only.
Look at this like normie film goer. He bases films on enjoyment. Come off it.
I'm sorry.
Go watch Saturn Tango.
Strap me in a chair.
Clockwork Orange style, yeah. Yeah, so we've got the submission spotlight section, and unfortunately for you listeners, we filmed this episode in very close succession with the previous one, and we haven't uploaded the previous one yet, so nobody knows we're back.
Otherwise, we would have got one.
Otherwise, we would have got a submission spotlight, because
sure.
we've gone viral and everything now with. But if you, so the submission spotlight's just 10 minutes of the podcast. We'll talk about whatever you send to us. It's any kind of media, like, you know, movie, short films, TV shows, if you have the budget for that, music, art, you know, if you've written a book, that would be very cool. We have done a book before, actually, haven't we? We did the
We have
the one that was on Amazon.
Supernatural Investigator book.
Yeah, that was good. It'd be nice to do another book. So whatever you want, send it in. You can contact us on our website, entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com, or you can follow us on Instagram @EOV Podcast. And you could try message us on there or on TikTok, which we might try and get, although we can't guarantee the availability of the @EOV Podcast username. Might if someone else is taking it, you know, we might threaten them with legal letters and all that, but that's going to take some time, so it might just be best to reach us on Instagram. On another note, we've got recommendations though, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Do you want to go first, Mr. Sweeney?
I do, because I remembered things I didn't mention last episode. I read the graphic novel Mouse, which is very different to how I thought it was, because I knew it was an account of, you know, the Second World War and you know, Jewish people specifically in the Second World War, but I didn't realize how autobiographical it was. Like, it's very self-referential in that it contains the author like interviewing his dad and taking notes and doing the comic as he goes. So it has this like really personal touch. It's a very bleak, simple art, like a really good story of the Holocaust and its legacy within different communities, and specifically just very personal relationships. And I thought that it was really good, and you should read Mouse. And I picked it up because I heard it got banned once in an American school, and I was like, oh, bloody bloody cancel culture. So I thought I'd fight against cancel culture.
Why was it banned?
Yeah.
Because of violence, I think, or something. It was not. I want to say that it wasn't banned by the lefty wokies. Actually, shock. Turns out that actually it was banned by conservatives, who seem to do most of the banning.
It does usually turn out that way. It's kind of odd. I mean, I wonder if our episode will get banned by the libtards though, because of our use of the word Tory.
Yeah. Also, it's Mouse, Maus. I feel like I should say
German spelling. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So read that. Also, I watched Dead Poets Society, and that was really good. Also, I watched Asteroid City. Oh my god, I watched that yesterday.
You're on a roll. Wow. Are you just going to keep recommending? Yeah,
I am. Asteroid City is good. I liked it. I think that it's kind of more. There's a bit more metaphorical stuff going on than in other Wes Anderson stuff, and it's probably both one of his funniest movies and also one of his saddest. Like, there's a strange sadness where I don't know if he's had someone die recently in his life, but there seemed to be a lot in that movie about not being able to express grief in a way that either you want or people around you want to express. It's very, I don't know how to watch Asteroid City. It's good. You'll like it.
Yeah, it is good. And also, that thing about grief I thought was interesting, because a lot of people criticised his dialogue as being like really, what's the word? Like stiff and like emotionless. But I think that like captured the idea of like not being able to express stuff. And I do think that was like, yeah, as you say, I don't know if that's something to do with his personal life, but I think that stuff like really worked in this particularly because, well, without giving too much away, it feels like because it's very much divided into like the strict acts, and a lot of stuff happens in the first act, and then like the latter two are like dealing with some of the ramifications of that. And I think it was like quite an interesting approach, and there's also a lot of like meta stuff going on behind the scenes, which was cool.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I agree.
watch that. If you watch it, Ben, we could maybe do an episode.
We could, maybe. We'll see.
Oh,
Potential teaser for a future episode. Well, I have 2 recommendations. The first one, okay, so this is interesting. It's the Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft, which in itself is a little bit of a basic bitch recommendation because it's part of the Cthulhu mythos, which is like his best sort of known body of novels and all that. But I'm going to recommend a specific audiobook version of it. And it's not even really an audiobook. It's it is, but it's hosted on a YouTube channel called Horror Babble. And the reason I'm recommending this one is because I've been meaning to get back into reading for years at this point. I used to read so much, and I just haven't been doing it lately. And so I decided to try audiobooks, and I don't have the money for Audible unless they want to sponsor us. You can reach us at our entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com and we'll review you. But I've been mainly looking at free audiobooks on YouTube or just online. And I really like this adaptation because it's got some really cool sound design. It's got some dissonant music in the background, and it's very atmospheric. And the narrator's voice is perfect because I got really weird about it. I was I listened to a couple versions to start with of the first 5 minutes, and I'm I don't really vibe with this narrator, which is probably a very neurodivergent thing of me to do, but I really like this one. So it's by the YouTube channel Horror Babble. They also host them on Bandcamp if you want to support them, which I would do if you enjoyed it.
nice.
So yeah, and then my other recommendation is I recently saw the Grand Budapest Hotel, which is relevant.
Also Wes Anderson.
It is also Wes Anderson, and I just thought it was good. It had a really good aesthetic. It had a decent story, and I wouldn't say any of the dialogue was sort of stiff. There was a lot of really good lines in there, especially from the concierge Gustav H. He had some right bangers in there. So yeah, Wes Anderson good. Watch Asteroid City and Grand Budapest Hotel.
Ben, I have. You know what? You reminded me of a specific recommendation for you.
Oh,
yeah.
This is what you get from watching Entertainment of Excellence. You get our private recommendations for each other that we remember on air.
Yeah, well, talking of audio versions of Lovecraft.
Ooh.
I know.
Do go ahead.
To a BBC audio drama, which is on BBC Sounds. The series is called The Lovecraft Investigations, and they're modern dramatizations of 3 Lovecraft stories that all, it's season 1, season 2, season 3, and it ends season 3. And it's in the style of a true crime investigation podcast, but they're uncovering a Lovecraft story.
Yeah.
And that has some really good sound design, because I listened to that in my bed at night, and there's scenes of them going through abandoned houses and things looking for this Lovecraft stuff, and they're supposed to be on the move with their audio recorders in hand, and you can hear their footsteps and every creak, and you're like, ooh, and then the episode will end with them finding some horror beyond explanation, and you're like, ah. So the Lovecraft Investigations on BBC Sounds.
The BBC do some really good audio dramas. I mean, I haven't listened to a whole bunch, but the ones I have been really top quality.
Also, I just got an H.P. Lovecraft book recently to read, so
I've been meaning to get into his stuff for years, and it's just it's that thing of I I've just found it really hard to get back into reading. I suppose it's just having a sort of busy lifestyle. But yeah, just audio books. If you've not tried them, give them a shot. And you might be surprised. You might enjoy them. And Audible, please get in contact at entertainmentofexcellence.weebly.com for our sponsorship.
On the final recommendation here, had quite a few. I watched a 3.5 hour Russian film by our boy Andrei Tarkovsky.
Nice.
Andrei Rublev.
Our boy.
I think it's actually his second film, and but it's the third one I've seen. I've seen obviously Stalker and then Solaris, and this one's like definitely a massively different feel to it, because it's not like sci-fi at all. It's about a priest from the early 1400s in Russia who like paints, and then basically something happens, and he then like takes a vow of silence and stops painting. If you thought Ghost Story was slow, then this is like a new extreme.
I was gonna say, yeah.
I thought it all like came together quite nicely, and it is a good look at this like guy's conflicts. A lot of commentary on like theology and religion, and also like art, and a lot of stuff about like burden and responsibility around art, and how he sort of feels about that kind of stuff, which I think having like a decent knowledge of Tarkovsky like it reflects a lot of his own opinions. I have got this book that I'm going to work my way through, which is, I think it's called Sculptures in Time or something, which was like written by Tarkovsky throughout his career. But I'm going to have to like finish up the rest of his films first, because he sort of like goes through them and then relates it to like some like cinematic analysis, and also some like, you know, general commentaries on art and some profound stuff like that. So
yeah,
I think the next week or so I'm going to be watching some more Tarkovsky films. Mirror, Ivan's Childhood. So that should be a fun time.
That would be good. I mean, we've got Solaris in our list of other films to watch in future, but I guess we could maybe substitute that out for another Tarkovsky film.
We can do, yeah. I mean, Solaris is amazing, but we can do something else. I don't mind.
Yeah, we'll have a think, and we'll see. And yeah, you know what you should be having a think about? Following us on wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're on Spotify, give us a 5-star rating, because one person has done that, and I suspect it's one of us.
No.
So get on that, and yeah, if you've actually watched more than 60 seconds of this, or listened to 60 seconds of this, thank you, because that is really cool. That is almost like, it's like literally 1/7 of the shot of Rooney Mara eating that pie. So we're glad we could retain your attention for this long. And with that, I think it's time to
say the catchphrase.
So should we say the catchphrase? Do you want to say the catchphrase, Tom?
The catchphrase?
Yeah, the all right, see you one.
I was like, thank you for being excellent entertainment. All right, see ya.
All right,
thank you for that. All right, see ya.
All right, see ya.
Presented by Ollie Luff, Thom Sweeney, and Ben Stinson. Music by Thom Sweeney and Ben Stinson. Audio engineered by Ben Stinson at Longwater Productions. All Right See Ya, created by Al Wright, Sr. All rights, brackets, see Ya, close brackets, reserved.